Characters from other universes are joining the battle in some of our favorite fighting games. Guest characters appear in many popular fighting game franchises, whether these guests are from other video games or somewhere completely different. However, sometimes these guest character choices by the developers can seem a bit odd at first, not really fitting in with the universe. I'll be covering my top 10 guest characters on both sides, the ones that are great fitting options, and the ones that don't seem to be the most compatible with the game's universe at first. This video will cover the weirder guest characters we've seen in popular fighting games. Despite the fact I'm calling these characters strange choices, it certainly does not mean I think they are bad characters. In fact, some of them I really like in the games that they were guests in after I saw what they had to offer. It's just that they seemed like unfitting characters at first glance, and for some, at second, third, and fourth glance too. I'll go into which ones I warmed up to as they come up. Any questions?
Hey, MrTopTenList, I'm gonna chime in a few times if you don't mind.
Join in! AT, who worked on a majority of the pristine footage you'll be seeing at points in this video, will have some information to give on a few characters on both lists. So let's get started with the top 10 strangest guest characters in fighting games. Number 10. Spartan, or Nicole458, from the Halo series, appearing in Dead or Alive 4. The main reason we saw a Spartan from Halo in Dead or Alive 4 is because the Xbox 360 had Dead or Alive 4 as an exclusive and launch title. So to help promote the DOA game and in return give the Xbox 360 more sales, Microsoft gave the game an exclusive character you cannot get with Sony or Nintendo. A semi-generic Spartan, as in a Halo character that was specifically made for a DOA guest spot that has since been integrated into the Halo universe as a canon character, so retroactively she's a canon character. Her fighting style feels very much like a DOA character, but DOA is a very modern game. Halo takes place in the 2500s, so a futuristic military woman decked out in armor feels a bit too out of place in a game with normal people who are just skilled martial artists and that alpha girl boss. I feel like the Spartan would have worked better in a game where she could use some of the signature Halo weapons. I understand she's military trained and has enhanced Spartan strength, but the Halo franchise is more known as a shooting game. Use the guns! Close combat is not normally what I associate with Halo. Number 9. Pepsi Man, the Japanese Pepsi mascot, in Fighting Vipers, the Japanese Sega Saturn version. Discussed in my Joke Characters video, Pepsi Man is still a guest character despite his tongue-in-cheek appearance. He can also be played as a serious character, which is how I'll be assessing him. One reason a lot of the characters on this list will be unfitting is due to their appearance, and Pepsi Man is indeed one of those types of characters. The character designs in Fighting Vipers are like semi-futuristic Virtua Fighter characters, with characters either being skaters or more reality-grounded JoJo's Bizarre Adventure-inspired characters. A completely metallic Soda Man sticks out a bit too much. Granted, everyone else was a normal person in the Pepsi Man commercials, but seeing Pepsi Man fighting is kind of strange. That being said, Pepsi Man still plays like a standard Fighting Vipers or Virtua Fighter character. He would still be a weird character if he shot Pepsi at you or something, but he does not feel as unique as you may think. Because his moveset feels more like a Virtua Fighter character than an outlandish Pepsi-themed superhero, I cannot put him too high on this list since it's really only his appearance that doesn't fit with the game. Number 8. Noritake Kanashi's video game persona Norimaru in Marvel Superheroes vs. Street Fighter. Noritake is a Japanese comedian who was invited by Capcom to make a character for Marvel Superheroes vs. Street Fighter. Even if you see this character as an original character rather than a caricature of Noritake, he's still a guest character since he does not align with either side. He's like a spectator tourist that fell into the game made by a special celebrity guest on the creative team. And I mean he's as close to a spectator as you can get, since he fights accidentally, like some of Phoenix Wright's moves in Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3, along with commenting on how Marvel characters somehow exist now, like telling Apocalypse that he thought he'd be bigger based on the comics. Capcom removed him for releases outside of Japan since they thought no one else would get the joke. The main reason he's not higher on the list is because across the Marvel vs. Capcom series, We've seen a few original characters, like Ruby Heart and Mingo in MVC2 after they failed to make it into other Capcom games, and the various reskinned Street Fighter characters like Shadow and Shadow Lady. Still, Norimaro is the only character out of the bunch made by a third party. Also, since those characters were originally made for Capcom titles, they still feel like Capcom characters, while Norimaro feels a bit too goofy even for MVC standards. Looks like a fun character to play though. Number 7. Gon from Tekken 3. Last character for my joke character video, promise. Do I have to explain this one? Gon is an infamous joke character in Tekken 3, being incredibly short and hard to hit, while still having his own moves that worked. I'm looking at you, noxious gases. He had his own manga and video games, and was very popular in Japan, leading to his surprise inclusion. Looking to follow up the steps taken forward in Tekken 2 with some surprises, the developers thought it would be funny to include Gon in Tekken 3 because, well, it was funny. It did not ruin anyone's experience playing the game, unless you had a friend that only chose Gon. If that was the case, I understand why you may have never gone back to playing Tekken. It's also not the fact that Gon is not human, since there are plenty of other fighting animals as realistic as can be in Tekken. See, Gon is basically a chibi cartoon in the real world. There is technically a quote-unquote serious dinosaur boxer in Tekken. I will not put Gon too high on the list because he was clearly meant as a joke and as a weird inclusion. He was an add-on, not a roster replacement character. As in, they did not have to decide between Gon and Law for the last roster spot. They just squeezed Gon in there, so no angry mobs were after Namco for this one. Number 6. Earthworm Jim in Battle Arena Toshiden, the PC version. Take a look at this character. Now take a look at him. Take a look at this character. Now look at him again. Hopefully I've convinced you why Earthworm Jim is an odd guest character in this anime-influenced weapon-based fighting game, since that's all I feel I need to say. As for the games, since they are a bit obscure, Battle Arena Toshiden was the first 3D arena weapon-based fighting game, even beating out the Soul Calibur franchise. The reason you may have not heard of it is because it was not as good as later 3D-style fighting games, like the Soul Calibur franchise, and Toshiden eventually died out. The character designs were fun if you like 90s anime, but that's about all it has going for it now. Earthworm Jim was a 90s side-scroller platformer about an earthworm that gained powers from a cybernetic suit. It's incredibly 90s, so it may seem dated. How could these two franchises ever meet? Well, when the PC version of Toshiden was published in the US, Playmates, who published Earthworm Jim 1 and 2, was in charge of publishing the 3 Toshiden games in a deal with Takara, Toshiden's publisher. Takara would then publish the first 2 Earthworm Jim games in Japan. When Playmates was working on the PC port, they decided to stick Earthworm Jim in the first game as a secret character because advertising. I would have put Jim higher on this list because he is one of the most out-of-place characters I've seen in a fighting game, but there are 2 things that hold him back on this list. The lesser one being that nothing about him is really in character. Outside of him having all the voice clips from his games, he has the exact moveset of the character Rungo Iron, even giving Jim Rungo's club, which is not a weapon Earthworm Jim is known for. He's just a clone or glorified alternate costume. The bigger reason is because this was the PC-only version. Toshiden is mostly known as a PlayStation game, meant to compete with rival Sega Saturn and its popular 3D fighter, Virtua Fighter. Toshiden ultimately saw a less stellar release on the Sega Saturn later, but Earthworm Jim not appearing on the console versions makes his secret appearance even more unknown. Number 5. Solid Snake from the Metal Gear Solid series in Super Smash Bros. Brawl. I loved Solid Snake in Brawl. I wanted him to return in Smash 4, and I would have given him more support on that Smash ballot if I didn't give so many votes to Jill from Drill Dozer and the Rhythm Heaven Interview Girl. The concept of Solid Snake in Smash Bros. Is just kind of bizarre when you first look at it. Not only were the Metal Gear Solid games generally not featured on Nintendo consoles, but at this point in Smash Bros. Life as a franchise, they never had a character from a predominantly M-rated franchise. Before Snake, looking at the roster of Melee and even Brawl, Samus was probably in the most mature franchise at only a T rating. But was his inclusion as unfitting as I make it out to be? Let's go to AT for this one.
Seeing as how there were only a few Metal Gear games on Nintendo systems, Snake's inclusion might seem a little bit odd, but when you factor in that Kojima had asked for Snake to be in Melee, he has a good working relationship with Miyamoto, and Twin Snakes was on GameCube a few years before, it really isn't that far of a stretch.
Also, once you look at his moveset, you see how he's a great fit. It feels like a lot of work was put into making him feel as true to the Metal Gear Solid games as possible with a Smash Bros. Twist, while still making the weapons more family-friendly. In his own games, Solid Snake relies on stealth, quiet, M-rated violence. He uses real weapons and kills people, which are two things Nintendo is iffy about in their mainstream image. When these moves were translated into Smash Bros., they were given a toned-down impact when used. Of course, I'll always find it funny how they gave his gun a cartoony sound effect in his final smash, as he basically snipes you from a helicopter.
It's showtime!
I like how the codec conversations Snake has with his support team, they play the whole thing totally straight. They still give Snake advice like it's a serious military operation.
Even his taunt was great, where he hides under a box like in stealth missions. So many things were done right. Just don't think too hard about how much sense it makes with Snake fighting a bunch of humanoid animals and other creatures. It was a success for fans of all series involved. Just listen to that fan reaction.
Oh, I can't believe I'm playing as the famous Solid Snake! In Smash Brothers!
Number 4. Kratos from God of War in Mortal Kombat 9. Here, Kratos plays like a Mortal Kombat character. He uses many weapons from the God of War series and is a faithful adaptation into the 2D plane fighter. He also does not need to tone down his violence. However, because he was so accurately adapted as a proper balanced Mortal Kombat character, he feels way too underpowered. The guy took down all the Greek gods, yet he's only on par in strength with a strong human in his MK appearance? I understand Mortal Kombat has gods in it that fight with humans, but the concept of characters like Raiden the Thunder God is that they downgrade their godly power to fight alongside humans and other mortal characters in their mortal human forms. They just retain their elemental powers and a few other things. Kratos is still his god-slaying self, yet a standard riot cop can kill the God of War with a taser and a single bullet? I know it's all for balance and fun, which is why he feels out of place. It's more the two games don't mix when considering the power differentials of the characters in each universe. Another reason is Kratos' moves felt like overkill after their damage was toned down. His dual swords, the Blades of Chaos, or the Blade of Olympus, are these godly weapons that are used to damage and kill the gods, yet he casually stabs his opponent for damage, yet in the end that equates to about as much damage as Kano's normal human knives across Mortal Kombat games. Opponents should be obliterated with one stab by Kratos. The main argument you could make is, this is Mortal Kombat. Characters get impaled by weapons all the time and act like it was a mere paper cut. Moves are only lethal if the announcer says, "Finish him!" before contact is made. While this is true, the weapons normally used are realistic weapons, still lethal in reality, so there's a limit to how unrealistic the violence can be with the weapons that exist in reality. Even Raiden's electricity blasts are toned down to be as lethal as an MK non-lethal impaling. Later Mortal Kombat guest characters followed that realistic weapon theme. So with that elongated analysis full of nitpicks for the sake of fun and a rebuttal, that's why I feel Kratos maybe should have been a guest in some other fighting games. War Gods, anyone? Number 3. Rash from Battletoads and Killer Instinct 2013.
I'm crashing this party!
Rash is an incredibly well-designed character in Killer Instinct. His attacks work with Killer Instinct mechanics and look like they're from his game of origin. He's a very interesting character, but since this list takes cosmetic details into account, just like Kratos' moveset versus strength in MK9, Rash's design being so faithful to Battletoads makes his appearance feel so out of place. Really, what makes him a good choice at all for KI?
As we've learned from Final Fight integrating into the Street Fighter franchise, beat-em-up characters just work in fighting games.
It's a good point, and while I get that, Final Fight characters are still normal humans with fighting abilities like those in Street Fighter, while Rash is a giant cartoon toad cameoing in a world with characters based off more realistic designs.
Bow before the Herald of Gargus.
Well, maybe gritty or dark would have been a better adjective, but still, all of the characters either are based off a human body structure or a realistic animal or dinosaur outside of final bosses.
When you factor in all the contextual attacks that are in the Battletoads games, you'd be totally foolish not to have Rash in Killer Instinct. Especially when you own the rights to both franchises.
Yeah, that's probably the big reason. I could see Iron Galaxy or Microsoft wanting a guest character tied to Rare, and Rash is that mix of obscure yet nostalgic. Battletoads is pretty infamous for its difficulty, and is a property that does not have first-party ties with Nintendo from its Rare days. It's all about the major differences of character designs in each game universe for this choice. The Battletoads plot and motive revolves around these humanoid toads with occasional shape-shifting abilities rescuing a princess from villains that had some pretty fun designs. The moves in Killer Instinct are great homages to the signature attacks and levels from the arcade game. All in all, I cannot hate Rash and KI based on how fun he is. Maybe Iron Galaxy just could have chosen a character from a different Rare game if they wanted a more fitting character design. Actually, the Battletoads main villain, the Dark Queen, seems like she would have fit in better. I could imagine her fighting Sadira. It doesn't matter. We have Rash with his cool, crude 90s tude.
These cameos are killing me.
What else have you been cameoing in? Number 2. Cole McGrath from Infamous and Street Fighter Cross Tekken. I've never played the Infamous games and I have nothing against them, but why is Cole in this game? This is Street Fighter Cross Tekken, one of the biggest crossovers between two influential fighting game franchises. Why are we including characters that have no relevancy to the crossover? And I mean one that does not even reference the crossover in-game. Norimaru at least did that. Cole is one of 5 guest characters in the PS3 version of this game. In my opinion, Cole is the most unneeded of the bunch. The other 4 guest characters are Bad Box Art Mega Man, Pac-Man, Toro, and Kuro. With Mega Man and Pac-Man, at least they are mascots of the publishers of the 2 series, so their inclusion makes sense. Plus, Pac-Man is riding a Mokujin robot, bringing in an omitted Tekken character. Toro and Kuro were more unnecessary, but at least they have the movesets of Ryu and Kazuya, so they tie into the crossover. Also, I don't want to have another entry for my joke characters video in this list. When there's a crossover game between 2 franchises, I want characters that just relate to the franchise. Cole certainly is not disrupting the game, but he does not fit with the theme of Street Fighter crossing over with Tekken. He was just weirdly out of place, not with his moveset or physical appearance, but with his relation to the theme of the game. A person who can shoot electricity is not out of the ordinary for Street Fighter, but maybe he would have been better as just a Street Fighter guest character, especially considering that this was Capcom's idea to collaborate with Sony rather than Namco's idea. Cole was also a bit too buff compared to his standard appearance, but there are already too many nitpicks in this video, so I'll let that slide. He's a fine character that made his fighting game debut in a game that should have just involved Capcom and Namco spotlight characters. Number 1. These characters can be incredibly fun to play and are very well made. In fact, I'm completely fine they were on the roster, but if you take a look at how polar opposite these guest characters were from the rest of the game, you might see why they were weird guest character choices. Star Wars' very own Darth Vader and Yoda, and that apprentice guy that wasn't featured on either box, in Soul Calibur 4. Part of the reason we had these iconic characters in Soul Calibur was to advertise the upcoming game at the time, Star Wars: The Force Unleashed. Starkiller the Apprentice was the protagonist in that game, and actually made his premiere in Soul Calibur 4. Ever since Soul Calibur 2, the series has employed high-profile guest characters, so considering the main guest would have been a character that's not yet part of the Star Wars canon, the developers reached into Star Wars to pull out the best options, Darth Vader and Yoda. Ignoring part of the reason these guest characters were here was for marketing purposes, it's Darth Vader and Yoda. If your developer gets you the rights to use those characters, don't squander that. They work in the sense that they are weapons users that are basically using future swords. But most other guest characters in Soul Calibur also fit with the medieval Renaissance time period, most recently Ezio from Assassin's Creed. Even Heihachi was not too futuristic looking when traveling back in time. Just looking at Darth Vader fighting a feudal-era samurai or Yoda on a boat in the 1600s seems a bit goofy. Shouldn't the lightsaber cut through any normal weapon too? Star Wars also got its own stage, and when you're not Darth Vader, Yoda, or Starkiller, this doesn't feel right. It feels like some sort of fan mod. I love it, but it's too different. Also, Yoda was broken because he was too short to get hit by some attacks. Second Coming of Gon, anyone? Anyway, despite the fact they're from a story that took place a long time ago, Soul Calibur takes place even longer ago, if that's grammatically correct, making them the strangest guest character choices I've seen in a fighting game, in my opinion. Despite all that, I think everyone on this list can be fun to play, some being among my favorite to simply play as in their own respective games that they guest starred in, ignoring how they fit the tone or all the other details. So don't view any of these characters as ones I think are bad playable characters. They were put in these games for good fun. So what do you think? Did I mention guest characters that you thought fit in better than I gave them credit for? Did I leave out any strange guest character choices? Let me know. Remember, there's another list with guest characters I thought were excellent choices I have coming up, so you may see some omitted characters on that list. It may even be out. This is a pre-recorded video, so you could be watching many days, months, or years after I've uploaded this video. So check out that upper left-hand annotation if you have annotations available. Or just check my channel, or any of these other fun fighting game videos. Or you can just let the video end since I don't have to tell you what to do and you don't have to listen to me. Go enjoy your day regardless of what you choose. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next video on fitting guest characters in fighting games if you haven't seen that already. Okay, bye.